Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm going to speak about homelessness in the UK and how much it affects our country and the impacts it's having and what we can do to solve the problem and solve it permanently rather than solve it and then it comes as a problem again. And after reading some statements and facts and giving my opinions, I'll look at uh, a Danish journal which shows what Denmark has been doing to successfully combat homelessness permanently in their country. Between October to December 2019, over 34,000 households were assessed as being threatened with homelessness within 56 days. So they were in they had a place to stay at that time, but within 56 days, if they for some reason they would lose their home, so they were on the verge of homelessness. In total, in the whole year, so in the whole of 2019, in total 36,460 households were threatened with homelessness or were homeless and they weren't able to get a house. In December 2019, households in temporary accommodation was 88,330, which meant that the figure went up by 5.7% from the previous year. In total in England, 280,000 people are recorded as homeless, with and in the whole of the UK, the figure is thought to be around 500,000. In the last year, up till December 2019, homelessness has gone up by 1,100 rough sleepers in London. Homelessness has gone up by over 600 rough sleepers in the Midlands. This is just the last year. Now, these figures show how big homelessness is and how much of a problem it is in England and in the UK, and we need to do something about it because people are just on the streets, and that's not really a good thing because they've got nothing and nowhere to stay, so they're more likely to get ill. So that has an impact on the NHS because they use up funds which they wouldn't need to if they weren't homeless. And because they're homeless, a lot of them don't have jobs or can't get jobs, so they do commit crimes. So a lot of them may be in jail, which again uses resources for the jail, which could be used elsewhere. And a lot of them, if they are housed, they're housed for 1, 2, 3 weeks, maybe a few months, and then they're back out again. And that's not in England, I've seen that's not a good way of doing it because a lot of homeless people, they're back on the street, and this uncertainty and lack of routine where they're housed and unhoused isn't good for them, and we need to find a permanent way to house them and then help them find their feet and then get a job so then they won't be in a position to be homeless again. And a lot of people from who go to prison or other places, when they come out, we need to make sure they have somewhere to go, or that's going to result in them being homeless, which is what the Danish people have been doing. And now I'm going to read a few things that the Danish have been doing, which has helped their homelessness problem go down by quite a lot. So now I'm going to read the previous facts were from the UK government website. Now I'm going to read from the Danish journal. The Danish have made 3 main approaches for solving the problem of homelessness. The idea includes a staircase transition, a normalizing model, and a tiered model. The 3 concepts were developed for the years 2009 to 2012, so they can achieve their main goals. They have 3 main goals of the scheme. And before I go into that, they have three three principles which they strongly believe in, which is why they went about solving homelessness. The first principle is no citizen should be forced to live on the street. The second one is young people should never live in hostels for the homeless. The third one is periods of housing in care homes or shelters should last no longer than 3 to 4 months. And the fourth one is if one is released from prison or discharged from courses of treatment, and accommodation must be in place. Now, going over those 4 points, I'm going to say why it's important and why England and the UK need to use those 4 points as well. The first point is no citizen should be forced to live on the street. Now, that sounds simple, but look how powerful it is. They're saying that no citizen of their country should be forced to live on the streets, whereas we in the UK, for whatever reason, if someone's homeless, okay, they're homeless, there's just another number of on the streets. We don't really look at it, and charities have to intervene, and other institutions have to intervene to get them in a place to stay. Whereas in Denmark, the government says that if you're a citizen, you shouldn't be homeless. If England and the UK took that approach, then there would be a lot less homeless people on the streets. The second one that I mentioned earlier was young people should never live in hostels for the homeless. Now, this is important because hostels for the homeless is for the homeless. So by using that resource for the homeless, by making it used up by having young people in there, is limiting the number of homeless people that can get in there. So so the UK should have hostels for the homeless, but then for young people in different circumstances that need a housing as well, that should be a different location. So both of these needs can be fulfilled individually rather than each need using up each other's space. So there should be one hostel for the homeless and then one hostel for the young children, rather than young children going into the hostels for the homeless, which means less homeless people are getting into hostels. The third one was periods of housing in care homes or shelters should last no longer than 3 to 4 months. This is important because if you keep on leaving people in care homes or shelters, they're just going to be in that environment and they're not going to progress. And if you leave them and just forget about them, that's not going to really help them. Whereas we need to maybe leave them there for 3 or 4 months while we look for a place for them to stay, while we look for paperwork and courses that they can do to get back on their feet, so then they can get a job and then they can eventually get some money so they can rent a house, so they won't be homeless again. But if you just leave them in those places, you're just leaving them, like forgetting about them and just hiding behind the problem, because just leaving them in one place is just not really doing much apart from sheltering them, which is important. But we need to do more than sheltering them. We need to resolve the problem at hand, which is why were they homeless and how can we stop them from being homeless again. And the fourth one was if someone is released from prison or discharged from a course of treatment, and accommodation must be in place. This I feel is really important, because if someone has been released from prison or from a course that they needed for treatment, then at that time they're vulnerable anyway and their circumstances are quite unique. And if you're not making sure they have somewhere to go to already, then if they come out of jail or treatment and they have nowhere to go, that's gonna be bad for their well-being, because they've just come out of prison, which has already had an impact on their well-being, or they come out of treatment and now they've got nowhere to live. So then we need to make sure and look at how the Danish are doing it. We need to make sure that prisoners have somewhere to go before we release them. So they're not, especially with prisoners, if they have nowhere to go, then they're going to be homeless. So they'll be doing crimes to get money again, which would result in them going back in prison, coming out, going back in prison. So we need to make sure they have a place to stay before we let them out of prisons. Now, I'm going to go through the three strategies. The staircase transition is it was created so they can transition victims of homelessness into permanent homes with support. The staircase community is a method that is specific to the needs of certain individuals who prefer a slower progress into independent living. The name of the model explains itself. It's a system that goes step by step in order to slowly help a person stray away from the lifestyle of homelessness. So this is basically when you're homeless, then they'll when they find homeless people, they slowly get them into a place and then help them and then get them into a independent place with support, and like rather than straight away finding them and then leaving them on their own in a place and they're by themselves. They're doing it slowly so the person doesn't go back to homelessness or isn't overwhelmed, because that's just gonna stop their progress. Where if you do it slowly, then at that pace, then they can adjust to it and then eventually be by themselves in a home and not want to feel like they need to go back on the streets because they're overwhelmed. They're not used to living. The second model is normalizing model, which is a system that moves the homeless person into an independent living initially with individual design support. The model advances the person a bit faster than the staircase transition, but it still involves individual support. So this goes a bit faster than the first one, whereas the first one you get them into you take them off the street and then you put them into housing with support, and then you slowly move them into independent housing with support still being there. But on the second one, which is called the normalizing method, you rather than take them to like a hostel or a place, you take them into an independent living place already, but which is a bit quicker than the first one, but the support is still there and they're still doing things at their own pace. And the third model is a person living in a hostel moves to an independent living by straight away, so that fast tracks them into it, and you help them by getting them out of the lifestyle of living homelessly, you help them ignore the negative stereotypes of homelessness, and you help them live independently. Now these three strategies, they showed that homelessness they haven't just looked for a quick solution. They've actually thought about it and thought about different people and different solutions for different people. So each person is different. So now these three models they can use and see which one fits the person best and ensure that people move from stage 1 to stage 2, stage 2 to stage 3, where they're eventually living independently and on their feet. The three strategies were clearly efficient in helping the homeless because 8 cities in Denmark implemented the methods and they were successful. Between 2009 and 2012. So by seeing how much it has helped Denmark and seeing how successful it was, I feel that the UK and England specifically can look at that method and maybe even speak with Danish counterparts and tailor it to the UK and tailor it to our citizens and our homeless people, and we can do something that will get people off the streets who are homeless and permanently back into homes rather than back on the street constantly, so we can solve the homelessness crisis, and hopefully we can together with looking at the Danish and other countries, we can end homelessness in the UK and hopefully around the world as well.